Good as New, a radical retelling of the scriptures by John Henson. And this morning it's Mark's Good News from Mark chapter 10, verses 17 to 31. Just as Jesus was setting out on another journey, a man ran up to him and knelt before him. He asked, "Good teacher, what must I do to have life to the full?" Jesus said, "You shouldn't be so free with your compliments. Only God is good. You know the rules. Don't kill. Don't take away someone else's partner. Don't steal. Don't lie or cheat. Respect your parents." The man said, "Teacher, I've kept all those rules since I was a child." For Jesus, it was love at first sight. So he said to the man, "There's only one thing missing. Go and sell everything you've got. Give the money to those in need, and you'll find things of real value in God's new world. Then come and be my friend." This advice was not what the man wanted. He went away very depressed, since he was very wealthy. Jesus turned to his friends and said, "It's exceedingly difficult for the well-off to become citizens of God's new world." This disturbed them. But Jesus further pressed the point by saying, "Don't be so innocent. You've no idea how hard it is. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for the wealthy to get into God's new world." This shocked them, and they said to one another, "There's not much chance for anyone then." Jesus looked at them and said, "It's impossible for people to make it without God's help. But with God, everything's possible." Rocky said, "Do you realise we've given up everything to follow you?" Jesus said, "The fact is, all those who have left their homes, family, business or property to help me spread the good news are 100% better off here and now. You belong to many families and share their homes and their luxuries. Although you'll experience persecution, you have a prospect of life to the full in the new age now dawning. But many of those at the front of the queue will find themselves at the back, and those at the back will be in the front." Our second Bible reading is from Hebrews chapter 4, verses 12 to 16, a letter to those who want to go back to the old days. When God speaks, things happen. God's words are like a surgeon's knife, cutting deep to the root of what's going on inside us. God knows all our thoughts and feelings. Nothing can be hidden from God. Everything that exists is completely open to God's inspection. It's to God we'll have to answer. Jesus, God's likeness, is our go-between between this world and the world beyond time and space. So let's hold on to our trust in him. We have someone to represent us who can sympathise with our weaknesses. He's been through everything that we've been through without doing any wrong. So let's boldly get close to God and experience God's love firsthand. We will be accepted in spite of our faults and get all the help we need.
A few weeks ago, Geraldine Doog had a wonderful episode of Compass in which she examined Jesus the Jew. Geraldine Doog, of course, is a Roman Catholic and takes her faith very, very seriously and wanted to trace her Catholic roots back to Jesus the Jew. And so this was unfolding in a very fine episode. Jesus was a Jew. He wasn't a Christian. We've been studying in Gateways a book called The World According to Jesus. Lorraine Parkinson, the author, examines through looking at the Beatitudes and other of the sayings of Jesus, just the kind of world that Jesus envisaged in his mission, and in his work and in his teaching. Jesus the Jew was a rabbi and grew up in the understanding of God's way and particularly God's preference for those who are on the margins, the poor and the dispossessed. Jesus the Jew, God's new world, the blueprint for the best possible world that Jesus envisaged. Many of us, whether we like it or not, need to use computers. And when they go wrong, we have various ways of expressing our thoughts. And I see by the response that we all have had this experience from time to time. Well, I was looking at my computer when I was preparing, and what came up on the screen made me think, hey, that's not bad. And particularly when I went to change over to Windows 10, this came up on the screen. Windows 10, life at a glance. Well, we're having a wonderful glance at life in the text today from the Gospel according to Mark. John Henson's take on this intrigued me, and I thank you for your indulgence in allowing me, not that you had any say in it, to have this as the reading today. And thank you, Jan, for your reading. There was something in there that struck me, and I wonder if it struck you, that the young man ran up to Jesus and knelt at his feet. And life at a glance. What was the Zitz im Leben? What was the real life situation for this young man? We read it and we've read it before, but I imagine a kind of a desperation, that he's out of breath. He's run because he's heard stories and he's seen what Jesus does as the rabbi, and he wants to know. Rabbi, what must I do? And Henson's take on it is to get life to the full. Life to the full. Hey, wait a minute. Isn't this the guy that's got everything? He's got the latest Apple Watch. I mean, he's well off. He is exceedingly rich. He doesn't know what to do with his money. He wants to know what else there is. What must I do? Jesus, in this encounter, says, you know the Torah. You're a good Jew boy. You know the Torah. It's about loving God and loving your neighbour as yourself. I mean, he said that later on, didn't he? When Jesus himself was asked, what are the most important commandments? That's it. That's the Torah. The law of God. Love God, love your neighbour as yourself. Heart, soul, mind, strength. I've kept all the commandments since I was a youth. That's the situation. That's life at a glance in this well-known story. But it goes on. When I want to clear up space on my laptop, I go to the facility where you can delete all your browsing data. And it's not because I'm worried that the police might get hold of my computer and find something they shouldn't. But I always go for the option that says, clear browsing data, obliterate the following items from the beginning of time. I think, wow, that goes back before, computers go back a long way. So it does. It clears off the data browsing that you've been doing. And that's what Jesus really was challenging this young man to do. What you're relying on, your wealth, is getting in the way. Get rid of it and help others, and then be my friend. I don't know whether you picked up in the text that John Henson records, with Jesus, when the young man came up to him, with Jesus, it was love at first sight. There are only this occasion and one other that I know of where Jesus is shown to have love for a fellow human being. Remember the Last Supper, and there's the disciple whom Jesus loved. When you go down to the pet shop and you look in the window, on the shredded paper, there's a little puppy dog looking through the window at you, and it's love at first sight. It may be the new camera or the new car, but this expression, love at first sight, there's an outgoing feeling towards this young man that we do have for fellows. He wanted this young man to be a friend, and he was very wealthy. One can assume, as a wealthy landowner, he had his minions do all the dirty work so he could obey the Torah. He could be very proud of saying, "These I have kept from my youth," possibly in a negative way by avoiding things that he shouldn't be doing, rather than the positive that Jesus was hoping he would suddenly see. That is, in his blueprint for the best possible world that he was asking for. What must I do to live life to the full? Stop relying on your position of power and wealth. The only emotion that is recorded in this story is one of sadness. The young man went away sorrowfully, and Jesus was sorry. He was not prepared to clear the browsing data from his life, that which he relied on for his position in society and amongst his friends. It's probably true that he made his money by defrauding the poor of the land. So he's not squeaky clean after all, even though he said, "I have kept these from my youth." Because, unfortunately, I had my laptop stolen, when it was replaced with a new laptop, it actually was a bit better grade, because, they go out of date in about 5 minutes, don't they? And so this new Acer computer, when I opened it up, this is what came up on the screen. Acer, explore the limits. I took that to mean, let there be no limits. And isn't that the challenge that Jesus the Jew talked to a fellow Jew about? They met as two human beings, and Jesus felt a warmth towards this young man and wanted him to be a friend to him. Because the context of this, the shadow of Calvary is looming very large. In this story, Jesus really is on the way to his end. And he's calling for those who are prepared to follow him at the cost. In Lorraine Parkinson's book last Friday night, we were looking at the saying of Jesus about the narrow way and the broad way. And we were discussing, we didn't necessarily come to any conclusions. That's the nature of the Gateways group. We're prepared to leave questions dangling in the air. We don't have all the answers. We don't even have all the questions. But there it is, the broad way and the narrow way that Jesus talked about. And he was inviting the young man onto the narrow way to be with him in his time. And what he was really wanting the young man to explore was what Jesus' mission was about anyway. And that is to bring about the new kingdom, the blueprint for a world, the best possible world, where people live by the golden rule, to do to others that which you would have them do to you. The negative of that is don't do to others that which you wouldn't have them do to you. But again, the summary of what Jesus understood from his Jewish heritage and was shadowing or foreshadowing as the way of his kingdom, as it were, is to love God, to love your neighbour as yourself. And we who have inherited this message, again, are called to explore beyond the limits in the way that we might address the world in which we live with that message.